What we up to? 16th, 17th of November 2025, and we've got the first real cold day where it's been below zero during the daytime. I think it's about -6, -7, something like that. But it's absolutely beautiful. You know, people will often say, you know, oh, how can you cope with the winter time in Finland? But honestly, give me this over plus 10 or something and thick grey cloud. Give me this any day of the week. I think sunshine is very, very important to human health. I don't exactly understand why that is the case. Obviously, it's useful in the production of vitamin D, isn't it? You know, sunlight plus cholesterol equals vitamin D, which is vital for the functioning of the immune system, which probably explains why the big club have bribed NHS bigwigs and mainstream media into telling us that both cholesterol and sunlight are bad for us and should be avoided. But like many things these days, it's a complete satanic inversion of the truth. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this winter sunshine, lovely and bright. Now, what I'm going to talk about today, I suppose I'm not completely sure what I'll actually call this, but I think this is the gist of it. Is we need to kind of fight back, and one of the ways in which we can fight back is try to become as healthy as possible. The big club, I think, are interested in depopulation. That's beyond doubt. And the other thing is as well is that before people end up being deleted, they want them as sick as possible. Why sick? Well, I guess like two reasons. First of all, sick people will be in need of miracle cures, which is extra customers for Big Pharma. And then the other thing is that sick people tend to be weak people and easily manipulated and easier to demoralise. So we actually have, as an act of resistance, a duty to become as fit as possible and as healthy as possible. And I think there's quite a lot of, if you know, remember them in primary school, Venn diagrams, you know, where you have like two different factors and the Venn diagram shows where there's a crossover between those two factors. And in my experience, what I would say is there's definitely a crossover between people who are awake and people who have kind of understood the nightmare, which is official healthy eating advice. And that's what I'm going to talk about for the rest of the video. So what I'm going to talk about is general purpose advice, and I know I get the idea that we're all different, and different things might suit different people to varying extents. You know, like for me, what I realise about myself is humidity in the atmosphere makes a huge difference to me. So I don't get on well with cloudy weather and where it's kind of, the air's humid, and it doesn't really matter what the air temperature is. I'll always prefer low humidity. That might be in the Negev desert where I spent a summer in 40 odd degrees. Loved it there because again it was low humidity, so it was quite comfortable. And say today it's -5, -6, doesn't feel cold at all because there's no wind, and again it's like super low humidity, very dry air. So yeah, we're all different in some degrees, but what I'm going to focus in on now, I think, is some general pieces of advice that are suitable for everybody. The first, obviously, the most important thing is diet. Way more important than exercise. And what I and many people have realised is that we've been told some absolutely monumental porcupines about healthy eating. So the main point being, with this low fat, high carbohydrate diet has been pushed, you know, with which basically means carbohydrates break down into sugar, and basically sugar is, your body can't cope with, I think it's more 4 grams of sugar in your blood, any more than that, and it starts to cause inflammation, which then causes damage to blood vessels, and which then can cause things like heart attacks. So rather than heart attacks being caused by fat, it's actually caused by high levels of blood sugar that damage the blood vessels. And then what happens is your body tries to repair that damage, which is why you can get cholesterol being deposited in those areas. But it's not the cholesterol that's damaged the blood vessel, it's high levels of blood sugar, because you've been eating too many carbohydrates and fruit and biscuits and cakes, which ice cream, which contain sugar. Now there are some cardiologists on YouTube who are kind of making videos and pointing this out to people, that the official line is wrong. And by getting people to move away from a natural human diet, which is based on animal fat and animal protein, towards processed complex carbohydrates and sugars, they've actually been contributing to you know, this phenomenon of more and more people suffering from heart attacks and strokes. Obviously there are other factors too, like for example stress. I think jobs in general have become more stressful. Certainly over my teaching career that was the case. And then the other thing, of course, since the beginning of 2021 is the medical experiment, which again causes damage to blood vessels, which is not great if you want to try to avoid heart attacks and strokes. So if you actually couple that with damage caused by high levels of blood sugar, you can see why a lot of people have been suffering from vascular problems. Oh, and of course the other one would be you know, your brain rather is supplied with blood. You need a good supply of blood to the brain. What happens if that doesn't happen? Well, I guess you would have dementia and Alzheimer's. So has that been increasing? Yeah, it has. And then the other factor there, of course, as well, is that your brain's made up of cholesterol. So if you're encouraging people to switch away from eating foods that contain cholesterol, then, well, it wouldn't be a surprise, would it, to see an increase in the number of people suffering from degenerative diseases that affect the brain, this organ that's made up of cholesterol mostly. Got to be careful here, it's all a bit slippery today. But yeah, one of the benefits of being 60 years of age, which is what I am, is that you can remember stuff from when you were a kid. And then also you've got photographs as well, which kind of confirm your memories. So growing up in the 70s, there was hardly any fat people. Fat people were few and far between, and they stuck out. Now back then, people didn't eat as much bread, rice and pasta never really existed in Rochdale in the 1970s. But these, you know, noodles and all of that, and of course we never had any of that stuff. Now, for me, I think that is You know, if you eat a diet that's been pushed low fat, high carb, your body will be constantly secreting this fat storage hormone called insulin. And what insulin does is it lowers blood sugar in your bloodstream to a safe level, and it does that by converting the sugar into fat. So yeah, insulin is a fat storage hormone. You're not told that, but that's what it is. So again, you know, you can kind of see this, that this is why people are fat. It's because they're eating too much carbohydrate, which converts into sugar, too much sweet stuff as well. Sugar is sugar. So their body is constantly secreting huge amounts of insulin, which is needed to get the blood sugar down to a safe level again. But the kind of the problem with that is that you end up storing huge amounts of fat. So if you look at a fat person in a supermarket and look in their trolley, what you'll actually see is loads of carbohydrates. So loads of super noodles, loads of potatoes, loads of bread, loads of baked goods, loads of crisps, loads of cakes, all that type of stuff. That's what fat people eat. That's what makes them fat. You won't see, if you look into their trolleys, you won't see loads of cheese, you won't see loads of meat, you'll see margarine rather than butter. You might have noticed this as well, fat people, they're always eating. Why is that? Well, basically they're addicted to sugar, and that sugar can be ingested directly through foods that are sugary, or more likely, I believe, it's coming from being addicted to carbohydrates. People who are constantly chasing their next sandwich or their next bowl of cornflakes. People who love their starchy foods. And I was definitely one of those people. It's this stuff that makes you fat. The other thing too is that when you eat that type of food, your blood sugar's constantly going up and then down when the insulin's secreted. So you have these crashes, which maybe some people watching these videos who are kind of still eating the diet that the NHS wants you to eat, you maybe experience this, you know, in the afternoon after you've had a big lunch or whatever, you have this crash. And what's happening here is that your blood sugar's been lowered again after it's been high. And then normally, or it certainly was the case with me when I was eating this way, that would then cause like a raging hunger. So I was constantly eating because, you know, I was on this roller coaster, high blood sugar, low blood sugar, eat some more, high blood sugar, insulin secreted, low blood sugar. And I was constantly, my body was constantly in fat storage mode because it was constantly producing insulin. So what happens is that over time, people, your body becomes what's called insulin resistant. So yeah, which basically is as it's described. So to get your blood sugar down again, your body needs to secrete increasing amounts of insulin over the years. And again, this explains why people get fatter when they're eating carbs as they get older. That isn't natural, it's a consequence of a bad diet. And you know, you can pick this up through a blood test where you're not just measuring your fasting blood glucose. What's also important too is to measure how much insulin is circulating in your blood. And so high levels of insulin is a kind of, you might have a normal-ish blood sugar, but you've got sky high levels of insulin. And what that's showing is that you're becoming insulin resistant. And then eventually what happens in most cases is that people develop type 2 diabetes, where either the body just kind of gives up, stops producing insulin altogether, or it's just your body's response to insulin it's just not there anymore. So what then happens is that you get permanently high blood sugar, which is then picked up in a diabetes test. So at that point, Big Pharma and the big club, they've got you where they want you. You're fat, you're unhealthy, you're miserable, you're easy to control. That's what it's all about. But don't you need, what about your 5 a day? Again, what I would say about that is that it's a complete and utter psychological operation. If you think about what fruit is, for example, it's just sugary water. And any vitamins that are in that water, sugary water, are not particularly bioavailable to a human gut. So where do you get your vitamins and minerals from? Well, for me, I get it from animal products. The animals can eat the vegetation, they can absorb the vitamins, and then I eat them. That's how our bodies were designed to operate. Our gut more closely resembles a pure carnivore's gut than it does a herbivore. Same sort of thing applies to vegetables. If you think about what vegetables are, they're just another form of carbohydrate. There might be a tiny trace amount of protein in lentils, but to get the protein that your body needs to be healthy, you've got to ingest a hell of a lot of carbohydrates that go with those lentils, which is basically, again, where the big club wants you. So for those of I've got some people who are vegetarians and vegans watching my video. To them, I would say, think about why Klaus Schwab wants you to eat vegetarian or vegan, and my message to you is like, stop doing what he wants you to do. Like, if he wants you to do something, by definition, it can't be healthy for you, can it? So that the topic of the moment is all about digital IDs, programmable CBDCs linked to social credit systems and stuff. So, and already on Marks and Spencer's sandwiches, you can see that if you have one with meat, you've used more of your CO2 ration, comrade, if you've made that choice. And whereas if you chose a sandwich with plants on it, then you'll use less of your allowance, comrade. Now, this is to the vegetarians and the vegans who claim to be awake. Are you not, my question is this, are you not slightly concerned that your way of eating is exactly what Klaus and the gang want to impose on you? And then adding on to that, the next question would be, do you think that the World Economic Forum, Bill Gates and Klaus, these people who are pushing vegetarianism and veganism, do you think that they have your best interests at heart? Do you seriously think that they're pushing this diet because it's good for your health? So drop me a comment if you're a vegetarian or vegan and you think that this is so, that they're pushing this diet because they really care about you. At the same time, they're trying to disincentivize you from eating meat. So again, or any other animal product like butter, they want you eating seed oils and vegetables and all of that stuff. So does that not tell you something about the health benefits of eating animal-based foods? For me, it does. If they don't want me to eat something, that tells me very, very clearly that it's going to be good for my health if I do eat those things that they don't want me to eat. They say that healthy grains, they say that bread, rice, pasta, potatoes, they're all good for you. So do you believe them? Or do you believe, like me, that the opposite is the case? That if they're pushing a diet high in carbohydrates, and if they're saying that grains are healthy, then for me it tells me very clearly that the opposite must be the case, precisely because I don't believe that they want the best for me. Quite the contrary, in fact. So personally, I'm not going to do what they tell me to do. I'm not going to follow their advice. So I'm going to be eating no grains, no rice, no pasta, none of that stuff. And I'm going to be going easy on the vegetables, but going heavily on meat and dairy. So what are the effects of changing over to eating carnivore, or which is basically just eating animal products, meat, fish, dairy, that type of stuff? Well, I can tell you because I've been doing it for 2 years, and for the kind of vegetarian normie fake truthers, I can tell you that I've not died of scurvy yet, and actually I feel fitter and stronger than I have for, I don't know, maybe 35 years, something like that. So in no particular order, first thing that's improved is my eyesight. So I need, which is a bit of a pain in the backside, because I need to go and get some new glasses, because my prescription's changed and my nighttime vision's improved. Now all of these things are actually linked to reducing my blood sugar levels, you know, high levels of blood sugar. This is why people who've got type 2 diabetes, who struggle to control it, they end up many of them sadly end up losing their sight. So switching to carnivore has improved my eyesight. So that's the first benefit. Second benefit is I've improved my dental health. What I didn't realise was that I never used to eat too much sweet stuff, but I was a carb addict. I loved bread in particular. I was constantly making sandwiches. Now what happens was that the bread would get stuck to my teeth. The amylase in my saliva would then break the carbohydrates down in the bread into sugars. And then, you know, because the bread would sort of cling to your teeth, you know, especially gaps between your teeth, it would cause tooth decay. So since I switched over to carnivore, my dental health has improved massively. And also stuff like, you know, less inflammation in my mouth, so I'm less likely to, you know, have bleeding gums and stuff like that. So that's the second benefit. Third benefit is linked to reduced inflammation. By reducing the amount of sugar in my blood, yeah, I'm less inflamed than I used to be. So what does that mean? Well, it basically means if I'm doing exercise, I find it easier. I can do more, and then there's less muscle stiffness afterwards. It also means greater flexibility, so I'm far more flexible than I used to be. But my body's kind of almost de-aged. Rather than feeling older, I feel younger, so I'm more flexible as a result of reducing that inflammation. Fourth benefit of switching to carnivore is I no longer feel hungry all the time, and I have this unlimited supply of energy because I'm no longer a sugar burner. Your body is like a hybrid car. It has two types of fuel that it can run off. The first one is sugar, and for the first 58 years of my life, that's what I was. I was exclusively a sugar burner. So I used to have these energy crashes, as I described earlier. Now, my body is mostly fueled by ketones, and ketones are created from fat that you ingest, and that provides a very, very stable source of energy. So my body is adapted, it can now burn fat as a fuel source. Now that's particularly useful for people who are overweight. Many of them struggle to lose weight because they're sugar burners and their body is producing way too much of this fat storage hormone called insulin. And when you're producing that fat storage hormone, it's almost impossible for people to lose weight and by reducing carbohydrates. And if they try, they'll encounter what I always used to encounter, which is like the most amazing hunger pangs. So that meant that any weight loss that you were able to achieve through starving yourself was only going to be a temporary phenomenon. Fifth benefit of carnivore is improve vascular health. So my blood pressure is lower, my blood circulation is better, I'm a lot warmer than I used to be. Beautiful old house here. Sixth benefit of carnivore is a greatly reduced risk of cancer. Why is that? Well, two reasons. First off is that sugar and carbohydrates that break down into sugar, that's what cancer cells feed off. So again, you can do your own research on this, but like a lot of cancer experts, oncologists, they've discovered this link. So if you get diagnosed with cancer, an important way to help reduce your kind of risk is switching over to a ketogenic diet. Stop feeding the cancer its preferred fuel source. Seventh benefit of carnivore is reduced risk of the other benefit rather of reduced cancer is down to this process called autophagy. So autophagy is the process by which your body recycles cells, including cancer cells. Let's just go this way. So you only are able to go into this process called autophagy if you're not burning sugar. So it's linked to ketosis. If you can get your body into ketosis, then what your body will start to do is to recycle old cells, including cancerous cells. So this process of autophagy greatly reduces your risk of you dying from cancer. Seventh benefit of carnivore is reduced risk of developing dementia and Alzheimer's. Why is that? Well, again, it's all down to reducing the amount of glucose in your bloodstream that causes vascular damage, including damage to the blood vessels in your brain. The eighth benefit of carnivore is weight loss, if you need to reduce weight loss. And it's just basically what happens is that you teach your body to use fat as a fuel source. If you're constantly loading up on carbs and sugars, your body will burn that as its fuel source, and you'll get into that cycle of blood sugar, insulin, etc., which leads to fat storage, which is the opposite of what you want if you're heavier than what you'd like, which is basically what you see around, certainly where I am in Finland. I'd say well over half of people are overweight, if not obese. So I guess this is all adding up, isn't it? Number 9. You're talking about a greatly extended life expectancy. Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Anthony Chafee, they both believe that with a proper human diet, average life expectancy for a human could be up to 120 years old. Now again, you have to ask yourself the question, does the big club want you living to 120, claiming a state pension for, 50 years, something like that? Of course they don't. So that's why they're pushing vegetarianism and veganism. The 10th and final benefit of carnivore is that you end up saving a lot of money. The logic behind that, a lot of normies won't get that. I used to spend an absolute fortune on things like ice cream, chocolate, sweets, you know, impulse buys out and about, baked goods, you know, pies, pasties, that, you know, all the kind of crisps, chocolate, various types of sweets, you know. So it's very, very easy when you eat the diet that's been recommended to you and pushed to you by the NHS, you know, even including kind of exotic fruits. Bananas don't grow on pine trees or on oak trees in places like Finland and Britain. They're imported. All of those exotic imported fruits and vegetables cost an absolute fortune. In contrast, it's very, very cheap to eat nourishing food. Like, for example, you could buy a kilo of minced beef in the UK, I would have thought, for £15. That's 2 days worth of food. So it's a lot cheaper, an awful lot cheaper. I would say for myself, my food expenditure has fallen by about 75% since I've been doing carnivore. They want diseases, life limiting and life shortening diseases like diabetes to be as common in Britain as it is in India, where they mostly eat vegetables and rice. So that's all I want to say today. Just think about it, and I wish you well, and God bless.